It was early November 2021 when I moved into my grandfather's old farmhouse in Black Hollow, Missouri, a remote town surrounded by miles of quiet farmland. The house had been empty for over a decade since his death, and I thought a little isolation would help me focus on writing. The first few days were peaceful. The silence was almost comforting. Every morning, I'd drink coffee on the porch while watching fog drift over the wheat fields like a slow tide. But then, one night, everything changed. It started with the light. I woke around 2:30 a.m. to a faint glow coming from outside, soft, white, and steady. I thought maybe a car had stopped on the dirt road, but when I peeked through the curtains, I froze. The light wasn't from a vehicle. It was coming from the middle of the field. A single lantern hung in the air, floating, or at least it looked that way from my window. I rubbed my eyes, blinked hard. The light swayed slowly side to side, as if someone were walking and carrying it. But I couldn't see anyone. Curiosity wrestled with fear, and curiosity won. I threw on my boots, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out into the cold. The air was still, unnervingly still, no crickets, no wind. As I walked toward the field, the glow dimmed, then flickered. By the time I reached the fence, it was gone. I shone my flashlight over the crops. Nothing, just whispering stalks and mist. I stood there for maybe a full minute, my breath visible in the freezing air, before heading back inside. But when I reached the porch, I noticed something new. Muddy footprints leading up the steps. They were small, barefoot, and wet, like someone had been standing there watching the house. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next day, I found the prints had dried into the wood. I tried scrubbing them off, but they wouldn't fade completely. I told myself it had to be some lost hiker or prankster, but deep down, I didn't believe it. 2 nights later, it came again. This time, I woke to the sound of knocking, slow, deliberate knocks against the front door. 3 times. Thud, thud, thud. I sat up, heart hammering, listening in the dark. The knocks came again, same rhythm, same patience. I grabbed my flashlight and crept to the window overlooking the porch. The beam cut through the darkness, and there it was. A figure stood just beyond the steps. Tall, motionless. His head was tilted slightly, like it was studying the door. I whispered, "Who's there?" But my voice barely came out. The figure didn't move. I flicked on the porch light, nothing. The bulb burned out instantly with a pop. When the light went dark again, the figure was gone. The next morning, I found the front door unlocked. I knew I had locked it before going to bed. I checked every window, every latch, no signs of entry. But on the kitchen counter, in a perfect circle of dust, sat a lantern. Old-fashioned, glass cracked, still faintly warm to the touch. I threw it out back and decided to spend the night at a motel in town. The owner, an older woman named Martha, raised an eyebrow when I mentioned where I lived. "You're in the Hollow House?" she asked. "Yeah." "Why?" She leaned forward. "You should leave that place alone, son. That field's where the Maynard boy disappeared back in '78. People say his father used to walk those fields at night, carrying a lantern, calling for him. Never found either of them." I wanted to laugh it off, but the look in her eyes stopped me. Still, I went back the next day. My laptop, notes, everything I owned was still there.
Y figurat maiba IDV reacta.
Maybe someone really had broken in, nothing supernatural. That night, the wind returned. I tried to write but couldn't shake the sense that something was waiting outside. Around 3 a.m., the power went out. Total darkness swallowed the room. And then, faintly, I saw it again through the window. The light, swinging gently in the field. This time, it was closer, much closer. I stood frozen as it drifted nearer, the glow illuminating the wheat as it moved. I wanted to run, to grab my keys and leave, but I couldn't look away. The light stopped just at the fence. And then the voice, a low, distant man's voice calling out, "Eli," that was my name. He said it again, louder this time. "Amy." I backed away from the window, whispering, "No, no, no." But the knocking started again. 3 slow knocks. I aimed my flashlight at the door. The beam flickered, dimmed, and then caught the faint outline of a hand pressing against the glass. The fingers were blackened, burned, leaving streaks as they dragged down. The door creaked, just slightly, like someone was pushing. I ran upstairs, locked myself in the bedroom, and waited for morning. I didn't sleep. I didn't move, just listened. When dawn came, the light outside was soft and pale. I crept down slowly. The door was still shut, but on the porch there were wet footprints again, leading away, out into the field. I followed them to the edge of the crops and stopped cold. There, sticking up from the dirt, was the same lantern I'd thrown away days ago. Standing upright, glass now whole again, flame burning bright in the daylight. I left that house within the hour, sold it to a developer who bulldozed it a month later. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I'll see a faint light swaying outside my window, far off, across the fields. And somewhere, faint but clear, a man's voice calls out my name. In the fall of 2019, I was a senior at Graydon University, a private college in upstate New York known more for its Gothic architecture than its academics. I lived off campus in a cramped apartment with two friends, Harper and Maya, both studying film. That October, the three of us decided to go out for drinks before midterms swallowed us whole. It was a Friday night, cool and windy. The leaves along Kingston Street crunched underfoot as we laughed and joked, weaving through crowds of students in Halloween costumes. Our plan was simple: 2 bars, then home before midnight. That never happened. We started at the Lantern, a small bar near the river, quiet and old-fashioned. Around 11 p.m., Harper ordered another round while I went outside for air. That's when I noticed it. Across the street, a small alleyway I'd never seen before. It was narrow, hidden between 2 old brick buildings, faintly lit by a red flickering sign that read, "The Vault." I'd lived there for 4 years and never once noticed that place. The door was open, pulsing light and muffled music spilling out. When I went back inside, I asked, "Hey, have you guys ever seen the vault across the street?" Harper frowned. "The what?" Maya glanced out the window. "There's nothing over there, dude. Just a laundromat." But when I turned to point, the sign was gone. The alley was dark again. I brushed it off. Maybe I'd imagined it, beer and exhaustion mixing together. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching from inside that alley. We left around midnight, slightly buzzed, laughing as we walked home through the cool fog. Harper took the lead, Maya followed, and I trailed behind. When we reached the intersection at Hollow Street, the air shifted. The wind stopped. The city felt dead. Streetlights buzzed faintly, then dimmed, and then something strange. Ahead of us, maybe 50 feet, a figure stood under a street lamp. A man, tall, wearing a long dark coat. His face was in shadow, but I could see the faint red glow of a lighter flicking on and off. "Probably some smoker," Harper muttered. But as we crossed the street, the man stepped backward into the alley. The same one I'd seen before. The same alley that shouldn't have been there. I felt something pull at me, curiosity, fear, both. I said, "I'll be right back. Just want to check something." Harper called after me, "Eli, don't. It's late, man." But I was already walking toward it. The red light flickered again, faint and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The alley smelled of wet concrete and something metallic. Blood, maybe, or rust. When I stepped inside, everything went silent. No street sounds, no wind, just that low, electric hum. Then, without realizing, I was standing inside a room. The walls were stone. The air was thick and cold. A single hanging light bulb swung slowly overhead. I couldn't remember walking there. I couldn't remember how long I'd been inside. In the center of the room stood a table. On it, 3 objects: a cracked wristwatch, a Polaroid photo, and a small glass of something dark red. The photo was of me, standing in that exact room. I stepped back, panic rising. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. From the shadows, a voice answered, "You found us again." I turned, but no one was there. The light flickered once, then steadied. And suddenly there were people, or at least shapes that looked like people. Dozens of them standing still in the dark corners. Faces pale, eyes black and hollow. All of them whispering in unison, their voices blending into a low hum that vibrated in my bones. Wake up, wake up! I bolted toward the door, but there was no door. The walls had closed in. The whispers grew louder, pressing into my ears until they became screams. Then blackness. I stumbled into the kitchen where Harper and Maya sat, eyes wide. "Where the hell were you?" Harper demanded. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "We got home together." Maya shook her head slowly. "You disappeared, Eli. 1 minute you were behind us, next you were gone. We searched for hours. We even called campus security." I looked at my phone. 2:17 a.m., the last photo I took that night. A blurry image of a red sign that read the vault. But when I showed them, their faces went pale.
Eli, Harper whispered.
"There's nothing there. We went back this morning. That alley doesn't exist." I didn't believe them until we drove to Hollow Street. Where the alley should have been, there was nothing but a solid brick wall, old and weathered, ivy climbing up its surface. No gap, no door, no sign, just stone. That night, as I showered, I noticed something strange. A faint red stamp on my wrist, almost like an entry mark from a club. In faded letters, it read, "Admit one." I scrubbed it until my skin bled, but it wouldn't come off. Over the next few days, things got worse. My reflection in mirrors began to lag, blinking a half second after I did. I'd wake up in the middle of the night hearing faint music, the same low bass thump I remembered from that alley. And once, around 3 a.m., when I looked out the window, I saw it again. A faint red light at the end of the street, blinking slowly. I moved away from Graydon after graduation, deleted my photos, changed my number, tried to forget. But sometimes, when I walk past old buildings in strange cities, I catch that same red flicker in the corner of my eye. And every time I look back, the sign is gone. It was late October of 2022 when I found myself drawn to the forgotten edges of Ravenhill, a town tucked deep in the northern woods. I'd moved there 2 years prior, chasing quiet and solitude after my divorce. Locals often spoke in whispers about an old, abandoned elementary school on the outskirts, a relic from the 1970s that closed after a fire claimed 2 students. I'd driven past it many times, its broken windows staring blankly into the trees like dead eyes. But one gray evening, curiosity overpowered reason. I pulled over, flashlight in hand, and pushed open the rusted gate. The metal screamed like something alive. Inside, the air smelled of mold, smoke, and old chalk. Desks were still scattered across rooms as if the children had simply vanished mid-class. I remember thinking how time seemed frozen, like the building itself refused to move on. "Hello," I called out, half expecting silence, half hoping for it. Only the wind answered, whistling through the cracked hallway tiles. The deeper I went, the colder it became. The walls were lined with faded murals of smiling cartoon animals, their paint peeling like skin. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied. I found myself standing before room 12. The door was half open, hinges groaning with every gust. Inside, the charred remains of a teacher's desk sat like an altar. Scorched books were stacked on the floor in uneven piles. On the blackboard, written faintly in white chalk, were the words, "We're still here." I froze. My breath fogged the air. That couldn't be. Someone had to have written that recently. My light trembled as I scanned the room. That's when I heard it. A soft shuffle behind me. I turned fast, heart pounding, but the hallway was empty. Just the shadows stretching long and unnatural. I told myself it was probably a raccoon or maybe the wind stirring old papers. But the air felt wrong, charged, almost electric. I decided I'd seen enough. As I started to leave, something clattered behind me. A desk leg dragging across the floor. I swung the light back. The desk in the corner had moved. It was now facing me. For a long second, I couldn't move. My mind screamed run, but my body refused to obey. I finally forced my legs to turn and bolted down the hallway. My boots slammed against tile, echoing like gunshots. But then came the sound, footsteps. Not mine. Running just behind me. I didn't look back. I hit the exit doors, threw them open, and stumbled into the night air, gasping. My car was barely visible through the fog. As I fumbled for my keys, I risked one glance back. Through the cracked glass of the front door, I saw them, two small silhouettes, children. They stood side by side, motionless, watching me. My flashlight beam wavered across the window, and for an instant, I saw their faces. Ashen, burned, eyes like empty sockets of black. I screamed, dropped the flashlight, and sped away, gravel kicking beneath my tires. When I got home, I locked the doors, turned on every light, and tried to convince myself it was exhaustion or imagination. But sleep never came. The next morning, I told a neighbor about what I'd seen. He stared at me a long time before saying, "That school burned 40 years ago. 2 children were trapped inside. Nobody's been near it since. Locals say they protect it now. Make sure it's never disturbed." That night, as I sat by my window, the sound of children's laughter drifted faintly from the woods. 3 short giggles, then silence. The next morning, I found small handprints pressed into the dew on my car's windshield. They were too small to be human, and they were burned black at the edges. I moved out of Ravenhill 3 weeks later. But sometimes, when I drive through quiet towns, I'll see an old school building on a hill, windows dark, playground rusted. And I swear, if you stop long enough, you'll see 2 small faces watching from inside.